Hello. I don't know who's listening live, but can you just let me know if you can hear me all right? Because I was going to do a test beforehand, but I haven't got around to it yet. I had to get my little one off to sleep. So, can you just give me a thumbs up or comment if you can hear me okay? Because if not, I'll start the video again. But if you can, that's cool. I'll just carry on. So, for those of you that don't know me, I'm Sarah. Hello. I set up Only Human Therapy last year, which is a counselling and psychotherapy business. So I work from an approach called the Human Givens, which is all about emotional needs and resources. So sleep is obviously a massive part of what we do, but it's kind of one of those topics that people don't realise links in with everything else. So it's almost a problem in itself and has such a massive relationship with mental health. So the sort of more you know about it and the more you can focus on sorting sleep out, then the less likely you are to get any sort of mental health issues. So I've just written down a few bullet points here, so forgive me if I keep looking over there. It's so that I can remember to cover everything that I wanted to cover. So firstly, why is sleep important? I'm sure that your parents probably told you when you were younger that sleep is important. We know that we don't feel great when we've not had a good night's sleep, but do we actually know the importance of it? So the reason, obviously, sleep is important for physical reasons and psychological reasons. So the physical reasons that we need sleep is that we obviously we go through these phases in our sleep. We have stages where you're in a light sleep, then there's dreaming sleep, there's slow wave sleep, and that's the key bit. Slow wave sleep is also known as restorative sleep or repairing sleep. So that's when you say you're ill, for instance, and you feel tired. It's because your body's telling you need to get some sleep to help repair your body. So it does things like it replenishes your energy stores, it helps with cell reproduction, it helps your immune system. So these are the kind of physical things. And if you've done a workout, for instance, anything like that, your muscles will be sort of repairing whilst you're sleeping. So that's slow wave sleep. Those are some of the physical reasons. And then the psychological reasons for sleep are so that your brain, I mean, in a nutshell, it's so that your brain actually carries on working, it functions, because it cannot just go on all the time and not rest. So there's been loads and loads of research done around sleep and the effects on the brain, and so sort of tests and experiments where they've tried waking people up, they've tried stopping people from going to sleep to see what effect it has on the brain, and quite quickly you do start to experience problems. And for instance, if you are woken regularly during sleep, then it's quite easy to become psychotic. And that's another thing I'm going to talk about a little bit later on in this. The sort of it's quite relevant to mums, especially new mums, when you are completely sleep deprived and you're not having that natural regular cycle of sleep because it's being constantly disturbed. So I'm going to talk about that a little bit later, but just wanted to sort of give you an overview of the physical reasons that we need sleep and obviously the mental or psychological reasons that it's really important for us to be able to function. And I'm sure that you notice when if you have a bad night's sleep or a few bad nights sleep in a row, you will definitely notice a difference, and you'll find that you snap more easily, your motivation is lower, your mood is lower, because it impacts absolutely everything. It's like food for our brain. And if you imagine that you go without food for long periods of time, or you don't eat the right things, you'll feel rubbish. And sleep is exactly the same as that. It's a form of nutrition for our brain. And so when you're not sleeping, other things start to to fall apart, and it then it's a bit of a snowball effect and impacts all areas of your life. And so the next thing I wanted to talk about is dreaming. Now, some people actually remember their dreams every night. Others don't remember them at all. Some people occasionally remember them. If you wake up, for instance, if you wake up in a dream, then you'll probably remember it. But when I mentioned slow wave sleep, that's one of the stages of sleep. And you probably heard of REM sleep, which is the dreaming state. So that's a state where your brain is in a sort of programming format. It's processing information. It's actually working quite hard when you're in REM sleep. Whereas when you're in slow wave sleep, it's actually repairing the cells in your brain. So REM is the opposite to that. People think that if they've dreamt lots, then they've had a really good night's sleep, but it's actually the opposite. You've actually been in a lighter sleep. So when you don't dream or don't remember your dream, you've probably been in a deeper sleep. So what it does is when you're dreaming, it actually uses a lot of your brain's energy. So you can find that you wake up exhausted if you've been dreaming a lot. And that's another point I'm going to come on to in a little while, but I just wanted to talk a bit more about why we dream. A lot of people tend to, focus on getting they want to be able to know what their dreams are about. So getting in touch with what they're dreaming about and trying to work out why they may have dreamt about a certain thing, for instance. But actually, at the end of the day, it does not matter what you're dreaming about. That's not it's not helpful, or it can sometimes be, but it's not essential to know what your dreams are about. The reason that I'm talking about dreaming is because it does play a fundamental part in the quality of your sleep. So it's like everything, in life, there needs to be some sort of balance or moderation. So if you imagine that you're not sleeping at all, not dreaming at all when you're asleep, that can be dangerous. And likewise, if you're dreaming too much, then that can be dangerous. So what I mean by this is that a little bit of REM sleep, approximately 25% of your full night's sleep, that's the sort of average amount of REM sleep that you should be getting. So a little bit of it is needed. But as soon as you go over that and you start dreaming too much, then we will experience brain exhaustion. And the reason that we dream, this is what I'm going to sort of explain the theory behind dreaming now. The reason that we dream is to do with, it's basically directly linked with worrying. So if you imagine that something's happened in your day, for instance, there's been a situation where you've wanted to say something perhaps and you haven't, that's an emotion or a feeling that's then been suppressed, so you've not acted upon it. And that is an example of what would become a dream. And if, for instance, you've had an argument with your partner before you go to sleep, but you've resolved the issue, that would not be something you dream about. So essentially what happens is things happen throughout your day. Those things that you deal with where you've sort of completed the arousal pattern, your brain doesn't need to process them because you've already done it whilst you're awake. So it's the things which are not resolved, or the things which have caused some sort of emotion or response from you, but that then has to, it has to be de-aroused somehow. So the way that your brain does that is to do that whilst you're asleep through dreaming. And the reason that you won't necessarily know, excuse me, I've got a runny nose, that's what you're dreaming about is because your brain creates a metaphor for that. So all dreams are metaphors. That's why sometimes they're really, really strange. And however wacky and wild your dreams are, that really doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if you dream about really, really strange things. It's what matters is the amount of dream that you're doing. And so to just sort of recap, this theory of dreaming is something happens throughout your day, something that evokes an emotional response or some sort of feeling. And if that is then dealt with, then that's fine. That doesn't become a dream. If it's suppressed, or if for some reason it's out of your control, that then may become a dream. So if you're doing a lot of worrying, ruminating, introspecting, you've probably got a lot of unresolved issues in your brain. And this is why there's such a close link between sleep and depression, or sleep and mental illness, but depression particularly, and anxiety, because if you're constantly in a sort of state of high emotional arousal, you're going to have a lot more worries than the average person. So those worries, if you think of it like a cycle, the more worries you have, the more dreaming sleep you're going to do. The more dreaming you do, the more exhausted you are when you wake up. And the more exhausted you are when you wake up, the less motivation you have. And that then has an effect on your mood, which then just feeds that cycle of worry. And then you worry that you're not sleeping, you worry that you're depressed, and blah, 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 blah. And it goes round. And the reason I'm explaining this is because it is quite easy and within your control to actually break that cycle. It's just a matter of knowing what you need to do and how to apply it. So quite often when I explain this to clients, they're thinking, well, that's great saying that, but how, you can't control how much you dream. You can't control what you dream about unless you're really clever and can do lucid dreaming, but it's not actually useful to do that. What's useful is to lower your emotional arousal so that when you do go to sleep, you've got less to worry about. And then you're kind of increasing your chances of being stable mentally. So if you go to sleep and you've got loads and loads of worries, lots of ruminations going on in your head, then you're kind of setting yourself up to have a rubbish sleep, doing a lot of dreaming because your brain's got so much to process whilst you're asleep. And if you think about it, like exercise, for instance, your brain's doing that when you're dreaming whilst you're asleep. So obviously, if you're doing all of that, you're going to wake up feeling really unrefreshed, feeling absolutely shattered because your brain's been working out all night. And so when you look at it like that, it's fundamental to be able to know what to do to stop that. And it's very interesting because if you ask anybody with depression, how's your sleep? I would say 95% of the time they say it's rubbish. Or if you say, do you ever wake up feeling refreshed? They will say no. Or they probably can't remember the last time they had a good night's sleep. And this is why. So not only is it important to remember physically why we need the sleep, but actually it's what's going on whilst you're asleep that affects how you feel when you wake up. For instance, right, somebody with depression could go to bed at, say, 10 p.m, wake up at 8 in the morning. That's a long time to be in bed, but they can still wake up feeling absolutely shattered. Whereas someone can go to bed at midnight, wake up at 6 in the morning and feel absolutely fine. And that's probably because the person who's had the longer time in bed, for example, in this instance, is someone with depression. The other is a normal, healthy person with balanced, needs being met. So it's all about the quality of the sleep you're getting, not the quantity. So people do tend to worry and put pressure on themselves to get whatever it is that people say we should get 7 hours, 8 hours, I don't know. They put pressure on themselves to get that. But if you're going to bed during that time and not having restorative sleep, then you may as well not be in bed. And I remember, I think it was Margaret Thatcher, somebody said, used to get 4 or 5 hours sleep a night, and that was enough for her, which most people probably couldn't function on. But she was obviously a very resilient person, so she was getting, her needs met healthily while she was awake, and that meant that she could sleep properly. So those are sorry, I keep having to look back to my notes. Those are the first 2 points. So I've spoken about why sleep is important, both physically and psychologically, and then the theory of why we dream and why it's important. So I'm not saying don't dream. I'm saying it's fine to dream because that's what your brain is designed to do. But if you can reduce the amount of worrying you're doing, then that will reduce the amount of dreaming that you do. So that kind of already stops that cycle from coming into play, which I talked about, where the worry leads to REM sleep and then brain exhaustion, lack of motivation, etc. I think I may, just bear with me, I think I might have a diagram of that cycle actually that may help to explain it a little bit. Bear with me a second. Sorry, I'm just looking for it in my scruffy notes. Where's it gone? Here. So this is just a visual form of what I've just been explaining, really. So as you can see there, so the setback is something that happens and then you worry about it. That increases the amount of REM sleep that you're having, which then leads to brain exhaustion, which then leads to lack of motivation and low mood, and then the cycle continues. So the main thing to focus on here is obviously learning how you can prevent that cycle, or at least stop it, and try to help your sleep. So that leads me nicely on to the next thing I wanted to talk about, which is sleep hygiene. Some of you might have heard of this. It's a bit of a new thing, like mindfulness. It's essentially hygiene for your sleep. So it's about routine and about doing all the right things that you can to give you the best chance possible of a decent sleep. So what can you do to help your sleep hygiene? First things first is imagine that, if you're a mum, I'm sure that you have a routine, a bedtime routine with your children that's consistent, and it involves some sort of activity where you're winding down. And for, like, some children always have a bath every night, they have a story, and more than likely they will go to bed at the same time every night. That is something that we need to do for ourselves, because how can we expect to just suddenly switch off when we decide it's time to go to bed? We wouldn't expect our children to do that, so we shouldn't expect the same from us. So sort of try and establish some sort of routine for yourself where you do the same thing every night. It might sound boring and a bit childish, but this works. It really does work. So if you work in the evenings or you work shift patterns at all, it is quite difficult to do this, to make your routine consistent. But even if you try it whilst you're not, on those days that you're not working, for instance, then it will start to help. So if you don't work in the evening, then it's a perfect opportunity to try this. So pick a time or a window of about an hour. Pick an hour where you could reasonably go to bed every night at the same time. So don't just wait until you feel tired and then go to bed. Go to bed at the same time every night. For instance, between 10 and 11 p.m. is probably a good time, but it really depends on what you do, what time you wake up in the morning. So once you've done that, I want you to pick a time in the morning where you could consistently get up at exactly the same time every day. I know people love a lie-in at the weekends, but actually, if you get up at the same time every day, you're training your body to sleep during those hours rather than to be in bed and not sleeping. So pick a time to go to bed every night, pick a time to get up every day that you can stick to within, say, an hour, because I know it's not reasonable for some people to do exactly the same every day. But like I said, you would do this with your child. You'll probably put them to bed at the same time every night, and more than likely they will get up at virtually the same time every day because they've trained, or you've trained them to do that. So now you're going to train yourself to sleep during those hours. Once you've done that, think of a routine that you can stick to quite easily, where it involves things like you're being mindful of what you're doing before you go to bed. So I'm having a coffee now, but that's okay because it's the morning. Try and not drink coffee after about 5 p.m. in the evening, because it will affect your sleep. Even if you're used to it and you drink a lot of coffee, it will have a negative impact on your sleep. So just think about how soon you're eating as well and drinking before bed, because you don't want to go to bed straight away. Then your body's processing that and focusing on your digestion rather than sleeping. And likewise, if you go to bed quite a long time after you've eaten or drunk anything, then you're going to be hungry, and that affects your sleep as well. So it's always about balance. This is the key. So those are your first two things. And if you are like me and you struggle, you take a long time to get to sleep, this next one's going to be really helpful for you. They say on average it takes people about between 15 and 20 minutes to fall asleep. If you're in bed and it's taking you more than half an hour to get to sleep, then I want you to try something else and get out of bed. So what I mean by this is, don't just lie there thinking I'm not asleep, because that's only going to get set off your worrying, which is already starting you at a low point. So think of something that's really, really boring that you hate doing, like paperwork, reading about something that does not interest you at all, doing the ironing. I don't know, there's loads of examples, but I'm sure you can think of something for yourself that's really something that kind of always needs doing that you don't like doing. But the important thing is that it's not something you can do in bed. So a lot of people do, if they can't sleep, they think, okay, I'll read for a bit until I get tired, which is great if you don't like reading. But if you like reading, then you're actually rewarding yourself for not being asleep. So you're rewarding yourself for being in bed, and not being asleep. And your bedroom has to be just for sleeping. That's another key thing to mention. So if you've got a TV in your bedroom, please try and not have it turned on when you're going to sleep. So what this is designed to do, right, is when you get out of bed, so if you can't sleep, you got out of bed, you go and do something boring. You're telling your brain that you can't be in your bed because you're not sleeping. So you've got to do something else. And you do that until you get tired again, until you feel really tired. And then you go back to bed and try again. If it keeps happening, then just do the same. Just be consistent with it. Get out of bed, go and do something boring, go back to bed when you feel tired. And I know that it does sound counterintuitive to getting a good night's sleep if I'm telling you to get out of bed and go and do something. But it's changing the way that your brain works. And by the time you do go to sleep, you'll find that you have less to worry about. Another really good thing which helps with relaxing you and getting you to sleep is something called 7-11 breathing. What I'll do is after this, after I've recorded this, I'll post some information about that so that you can access it or email me and ask about it. Just a second. So sleep hygiene, the main things I've mentioned are food and caffeine. So be mindful of that. Be mindful of what you're doing before you go to bed. Go to bed and get up at the same time every day. Before you go to bed, make sure that you're not doing too much of this. I know it's difficult because they're part of our lives, but you know, I don't really need to even explain that to you because it's all over research anyway. It's all over the media. Phones and screens are bad for us, bad for our sleep. So if you can try your hardest to, you know, reduce that or cut it out completely, say an hour before you go to bed, then you'll be again increasing your chances of having a proper sleep. And finally, on sleep hygiene, do something before bed, so in that last hour before bed, that's relaxing. So this is where you do the nice bit, where you enjoy something. So if you do enjoy reading, do that for a bit before bed. Or if you like having a nice hot shower or bath before bed, then do that. But something that's relaxing or that makes you feel good and kind of takes your mind off things, really. So that is sleep hygiene. If anyone has any questions, then please do ask, because I've just babbled on for nearly 27 minutes now. I know that only 2 people at the moment are watching live, but this is going to be available to watch and replay anyway, because I just feel that this is such an important topic to talk about, and mums especially. You know, sleep is massively compromised, probably from the time you have your baby right up until they're about 10. I can't speak for everyone, but because I've only got a 2-year-old, but sleep is robbed from us when we're mums. And I've mentioned at the beginning that when sort of sleep experiments have been done on people, they when your sleep is affected, you quite quickly mental illness can quite quickly take hold and sort of snowball, really. I know that psychosis particularly can be brought on. You can actually sort of artificially induce psychosis, which obviously isn't something that I recommend. But if you stop somebody from sleeping, for instance, or wake them whenever they go into a dream, they can actually become psychotic. And I know from my personal experience of postpartum psychosis, that's what happened with me. There was a period of time building up to my labour where I had no sleep for the sort of probably about 3 days before, because I had a very long early labour. Then the labour itself was overnight, and then obviously once my daughter was here, got a newborn baby, so I didn't get any sleep then. And within 2 to 3 days, I was psychotic and having hallucinations. But obviously mine was a very severe case. I don't want to worry you, but the reason that happened was because I had postnatal depression as well. So that, kind of combined turned into something quite different. I'm not saying that you're going to become psychotic if you don't sleep well, but I'm just trying to illustrate the importance of it. And it's just it's fundamental for human beings to be able to survive. Without sleep, we're completely useless. And so even if you're thinking, well, this is great advice, but I can't control how much my child wakes up in the night. I don't have enough time to sleep or to go to sleep for a certain amount of hours. that's fine, as long as you're doing these things that I've mentioned. When you do get that time, then you're going to be increasing your chances of a better sleep, and therefore reducing your chances of mental illness. So if you've got a child that wakes up every couple of hours, yes, it's going to have an impact on your sleep, but as long as you are still doing all those things that help you get to sleep in the first place, and still following the same routine of going to bed and getting up at the same time, you should be absolutely fine. And another thing to mention here, actually, which probably doesn't apply to mums who've got 6 months or younger, but I know when you're feeling tired and you've had a rubbish sleep, it's very easy to go to sleep and have a nap when your child does, which I think you need at the beginning. But if you're doing that regularly, again, you're going to be compromising your sleep at night. So try when you can to avoid doing that. But like I say, if it's in the really early stages of motherhood, then sleep whenever you can and whenever you want. It's only after that. I mean, probably even after about a year, to be honest, I would say that then you need to concentrate more on yourself and getting that into a routine. So for those, because I know some people have just joined, I'm going to quickly recap then what I've covered and then open it up for questions, because I wanted this to be quite interactive and not just me talking, so that if any people have specific questions about sleep, then please do ask. So to recap, we've talked about why is sleep important. So both the physical reasons and the psychological reasons for sleep. We've got slow wave sleep is probably the deepest stage of sleep. That's when all your repairing happens. So if you've been poorly, that's when your kind of immune system would get worked on. You reproduce cells, your brain functioning sort of replenishes, if that makes sense. You have muscle regeneration. All those kind of things happen when we're in slow wave sleep. And so that physically is absolutely key for our health. It's kind of widely known that when you have depression, for instance, you're more susceptible to illness, and this is one of the main reasons why, because you're compromising that amount of slow wave sleep. Why do we dream? Talked about the REM state and the importance of dreaming, but also the problems that can cause if you're having too much dreaming. I forgot about my coffee. And it's important to know that quality here is more important than quantity. So don't beat yourself up about getting a certain amount of hours sleep a night. It's about the quality of the sleep you're getting. So doing things that I've talked about in sleep hygiene are going to increase your chances of a good night's sleep. And so they're the cycle of dreaming. Sorry, not the cycle of dreaming. I talked about why we dream. And then I'm just going to ask you this question because I did mention it near the beginning, but if anyone watching now could respond. Do you wake up feeling refreshed or exhausted? And that's linked to the cycle of depression. So if anyone feels confident enough to answer, then please do. And I did say that I was going to talk about something called 7-11 breathing, which I will do in a moment. I just would like anyone to ask if they've got any questions about anything that I've talked about. And oh, good, Ian is refreshed now. Good. Hopefully that's because he's tried something new. Ian's someone that I've been working with, so I think that he has improved his sleep over the last few weeks by trying some of the new techniques. Clara, hi Clara. Usually not 100% great. I'm a little bit confused by that. I'm so sorry. Usually not, as in usually not refreshed. I think that's what she means. So then hopefully you've got some great tips to take away from today then, Clara, because I know you're a busy lady and you're a mum. So you've got lots going on, lots to take into account. So best things for you to do is to start to try and implement that sleep hygiene. So having a routine for yourself before going to bed, and just being mindful of what you're eating, what you're drinking, what you're doing before you go to bed. Just typing Clara, that's okay. And I will talk about the 7-11 breathing in a minute, because I think that's something that's useful for everyone to practice throughout the day, but also if you're in bed and you can't sleep. I'm just waiting for my next question. Bring them in, please. Part of my PMT issue is that in the run-up I can't sleep. I know exactly what that's about, and actually I have the same problem. You know, it is partly to do with your hormones, obviously. It's to do with also the fluctuation in your body temperature. So when your hormones are changing, your body's preparing for that. You know, your body temperature goes from one extreme to the other, and quite often you can be too hot, and that's what's mainly impacting on your sleep. So it kind of interferes with your cycle, your sleep cycle. But I haven't got specific advice for that. I just know that the more you do these other relaxation sort of inducing things, then the better that will be. So I'll explain now to you what 7-11 breathing is all about, and then hopefully you can go away and try that. So the more relaxation you can practice, then the better that will be. 7-11 breathing then is a technique where you breathe in for a count of 7, your own count, and then you breathe out for a count of 11. And the reason the out breath is longer is because this is what slows you down. It slows down your heart rate, lowers your blood pressure. It's a fantastically quick way to relax. So I always teach it to all clients. It's absolutely amazing with anxiety as well. It's really good with panic attacks. So it's kind of like my golden nugget, if you like. It's usually one of the first things that I teach people. So when you practice this 7-11 breathing, the main thing to remember is that you're trying to breathe from your diaphragm. You can't see what I'm doing with my hands here, but so you're not breathing from here like you normally do. When you breathe in for 7, I want you to try it with your hand on your tummy. And so what you try and do is, as you breathe in, you should be able to push your hand out. So you're imagining that there's a balloon in your tummy, and that expands as you breathe in, and it goes down when you breathe out. So really focus on imagining that you're breathing from your diaphragm and not your chest. And the act of doing this, both the act of focusing on your breathing and counting, that relaxes you in itself, and the concentrating on the counting bit is supposed to stop your mind from going elsewhere, which it will do, but as long as you keep being sort of stern with yourself and keep reminding yourself to come back to the counting and the breathing, then you're in the present moment. And so the out breath, then, what that's designed to do is, the reason it's longer, sorry, I've got a really itchy nose today. The reason it's longer than your in breath is because it has to stimulate the relaxation response. And if you focus on your body now, just try for me, when you breathe in, you'll notice that actually you tense your muscles. So you're tensing your shoulders and everything. And when you breathe out, they relax again. So the more of the out breath you're doing, the longer that is, you're inducing relaxation in your muscles, and you're stimulating something called the parasympathetic nervous system. And that's what you want. That's the opposite of your fight or flight response. And I don't know, I hope that's kind of answered your question, Clara, because I know it's not directly related to that, but there are some physical reasons that PMT affects your sleep. So that, you can't control. There are some hormonal things going on there, but what you can do is implement these other things that will help. So any sort of there's loads of other relaxation things that you can do. There's things you can watch or listen to on YouTube. There's loads of apps that you can listen to stuff. So whatever works for you. Obviously having a bath, that kind of thing, is a natural way to relax as well. Any more questions? Because I did plan to do half an hour. I've gone up to 40 minutes now, but that's fine. I just want to know if anyone's got any more questions before I go. You can, if you're watching this in replay, then you can also ask questions afterwards. Clara, I've tried the breathing before and it doesn't work for me. Just need to work on it as a habit. Yes, that's true. It's like anything, you have to practice it to get good at it. And I found when I first tried it, I thought, well, this isn't doing anything, but you need to be consistent. And it's like a muscle, you've got to train it. So it doesn't, the sort of relaxation things, sorry, there's loads of stuff going across the screen, which is distracting me. The breathing exercises do work for everyone. Relaxation as a kind of whole doesn't necessarily work for everyone, but the more you can practice this breathing, I would highly recommend it. And if Clara, you notice anything that's affecting, obviously other than your PMT, if you can notice any other things that might be affecting your sleep, then, like, for instance, notice if you're dreaming more, then, which you might be, just see if there's anything else that you might be able to do to improve your sleep during that time, because it might be a bit of a psychological thing as well. If you're thinking, oh no, it's that time of the month again, I'm going to have a rubbish sleep, then that is actually going to be sort of making you predisposed to that. So kind of feel more confident about it. Know that you've got these tools that you can try. If you're struggling with your sleep, then, in your face PMT kind of thing, you can put all these things in place. Anybody else, any final questions? And then I'm going to say goodbye. So I'll wait till 45 minutes. So we've got another minute. I did expect to have a lot of questions about sleep, actually, or the sort of relationship with sleep and mental health. It's fine if there's no more questions. I think the next live that I want to do is going to be about anxiety. I did a few polls asking, what people wanted, and sleep came up by far at the top at the moment. So that's why I've done that one first. The next sort of two most popular topics were anxiety and stress. So I might do those together, or I might do them as separate ones. I don't know yet. Okay, then. I don't think anyone's got any more questions for now, but please do get in touch if you do think of something afterwards, and also if there's something specific that I didn't talk about that you would have liked to, then I'd be happy to, for you to get in touch, and I'll try my best to answer. I do hope that it's been really helpful. I hope that it's been informative and you've learned something new to take away, because I didn't want this to be like a lecture. I wanted it to be something that you can learn from. And fingers crossed, if anyone does struggle sort of regularly with their sleep, then you've got, let me know how you get on when you try these new things. Some of them are very sort of self-explanatory. Others are things that might be completely new to you that you may not have thought of. So like I say, I hope that you've got something from it, and I certainly enjoy doing this kind of thing. And I will hopefully hear from you soon. Oh, somebody's just come on and says, oh, you may have discussed this already. Any quick tips on how to increase deep sleep? Specifically, deep sleep is kind of slow wave sleep, which is what I've already talked about a little bit. So maybe if you watch this back, Kat, from the beginning, you might get the answers to that. It's sort of about a combination of all the tips that I've talked about. They increase your chances of getting a deep sleep. So when I've said good night's sleep, what I mean by that is a deep sleep. And there are some really good YouTube things about, sort of they're guided meditations that you can do as you're going to sleep that are designed to induce specifically deep sleep. But yeah, if you watch it back from the beginning, hopefully the answers are in there. And thank you so much for everyone that's listened today. It's actually my first proper live, so I'm really pleased that I've had this many watching and interacting. I will probably be back either tomorrow or the day after, I think, with the next one about anxiety and stress. And I will send some information if you're interested about 7-11 breathing, which I've mentioned. So enjoy, and I hope you sleep well tonight, everyone. Bye.